Hi guys, it's Danielle here, and I'm about to show you how I made my Scarlet Witch cosplay from the series Wolverine and the X-Men.
So yeah, anyway, what I did was, for my legs, I originally wanted to do a duct tape method. So what you do is you wrap your leg in saran wrap, or whatever part of your body you gotta make something out of, and then you wrap it in duct tape. Then you cut your whatever out, and then what I did was I laid it all flat, and I transferred it onto thicker, like cardboard-like cardstock paper, and that's what I used for my pattern. I did the same thing with my gloves, except I didn't use the duct tape method. I just put my hand on the thing and I'm like, hey, bro, come trace my hand. And she's like, okay, and then she did it. And that's how I made the pattern for that. Now with the fabric, when you trace out your pattern, you just have to be really careful. Just make sure you pin like the edge of the fabric to make sure that it's all evenly spaced out, because if your fabric is not evenly spaced out and you start cutting, you're gonna have a big problem. Also pin around your pattern, because if you don't, the same problem's gonna happen, and that's very bad, because you're not only wasting fabric, but everything's going to turn out wrong and you're just going to get frustrated and redo it all over again. So save yourself the trouble and do this. Now, what fabric I used is a very thin fabric. It's also very stretchy, which is what I liked about it. So it'd be very easy to make my boot covers and my arm gloves things, those things. And what I actually did for my boot covers is I didn't do the method that I originally wanted to do, which was the duct tape and the whatever in the pattern. What I instead did was, after I did everything else, I took the extra fabric, wrapped it around my leg, and I pinned it up and down my leg with my shoe on. And then I had my roommate just do a quick running stitch, which is just a straight stitch down my leg. And then I just sewed it on my machine and fixed whatever areas I need to fix. And then I glued it to my shoe, and it was awesome. I did the duct tape and saran wrap method for the bodysuit, which is also a leotard. I'm pretty sure this is called a leotard. Yeah, this is a leotard? Good. And then I just traced it on thicker brown paper before I traced it onto the fabric. And that's what I did. So I actually cut out two layers. I cut out one in red, and then I cut out an inner layer, which was a medium weight cotton, which gave it a nice stiff build, because if I didn't do that, it would turn out like all floppy and messy, and it would just look really bad. This part was so difficult because I couldn't figure out like which side was which. I had to flip everything and turn it over, and then I sewed parts wrong. It was just a big giant mess. So when you guys do this, just make sure like you label everything and don't get confused, because like I got so frustrated and I stabbed myself a lot with pins. And I sing a lot of Disney. I fucking love Disney. Try and see if you can guess what that song is. I bet you can't, because it's my favorite. Or at least it's one of my favorites, I think. Yeah, I do like that movie. Yeah, this movie's pretty sweet. So anyway, yeah, I was just sewing and flipping and pinning and stuff. Just be sure, like, when you trace out the pattern onto the fabric, you give it at least 5/8 of an inch. That's your seam allowance, that's what it's called. And that just gives you like a leeway so you're not like sewing right on the edge, because you can't sew right on the edge. Like that's just like, that's crazy talk. It's just insane. I love how David Bowie's just like peeking casually through my sewing machine. He's just like, hey, you remember that movie Labyrinth? It's pretty sweet, huh? Yeah, I was the star. Oh my gosh, you know what I just realized? One of his eyes is in blue. Maybe I'll just like go back and paint my little pop figure to have a blue eye, because David Bowie has 2 different color eyes. He's the most amazing person in the world, in case you were all wondering. I should just do a Ziggy Stardust cosplay. Idea. Serious face. Alright, so this is what it all looks like. You see the seam allowance is like poking up. That's before I ironed it. And I'm gonna use, actually, where the seam allowance is right now, that's where I'm gonna put the boning. So what I bought is I bought this like plastic boning from Joann's because they didn't have steel, because it sucks or whatever. And what I did was like I measured it out and I cut it to the size I wanted it. You don't want your boning to go all the way to the end, because then it's gonna like poke you and stab you. It's gonna be like really upsetting and you're gonna get really pissed off. When you put it down, you want to make sure that before you sew, you gotta take the boning out, the plastic boning out, and then you sew like the bottom end, and then you sew up, and then you sew up the other side, and then you put the plastic in. But when you put the plastic boning in, so the boning casing, you gotta make sure it's round, because if it's not round, like you have to like physically cut it into a round shape. And you have to do this so it doesn't stab you, because that hurts like a lot. Or otherwise that shit's gonna stab you and it's gonna hurt. This is gonna be my first time using Warbler, so we're just gonna see how it goes. So this is my first time using Warbler. I think it went pretty well. I mean, it could have been better, but like for a first time, it was pretty good. It's pretty great. I was actually like very proud of it. Look how proud I am. Look how happy I am in this Snapchat. It's great. I'm like this guy. Anime Boston 2015, yay! I love how like whenever I do these videos, I mean they're wearing a hat or a sweatshirt. I love it. So my next cosplay is going to be Daenerys Targaryen. It's going to be an armor build because she just came over from Essos. She's coming to Westeros. She's going to get that Iron Throne. It's going to be sweet. She's going to meet up with Jon Snow. They're going to be awesome, and maybe they'll have babies and everything will be beautiful. But it's George R.R. Martin, so like nothing is ever beautiful. We can only hope for the best.